is not muted. So we're asking everyone to please go ahead and mute. Welcome to NeuroDevelopmental Movement Questions and Answers. My name is Jocelyn Williams. It is an honor to be with you this evening. A little bit about myself. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 5 children. 3 of my kiddos, the 3 in the middle, are adopted. And they were adopted through foster care in New York City. And they are thriving. Love my kids. I am also an educator. I have over 25 years of experience as an educator. I have my master's from Columbia University Teachers College in New York City. And I am the founder and director of NeuroDevelopmental Solutions. NeuroDevelopmental Solutions Incorporated, also known as NeuroDevelopmental, provides neurodevelopmental movement, which is a movement-based educational approach to equipping the brain for life. Now, I love that, equipping the brain for life. And you're going to hear that throughout tonight's presentation. Why? Because I firmly believe that we were designed to live life abundantly, and we want to provide that opportunity, and we get to provide that opportunity for our clients. To begin, I want to tell you a little story about this precious little girl. This precious little girl, we'll call her Baby Girl. Baby Girl had a very, very, very tough start to life, as you can see. She was born premature. She was removed from her home, put into the foster care system, and spent her first several weeks of life in the NICU. During that time, she underwent several surgeries, some of them that failed. Those surgeries were not all successful. When placed in the home of her foster care family, they were told that Baby Girl would never be able to eat or drink, suck or swallow. Therefore, she would have to have a feeding tube for the rest of her life. And in fact, they were going to be scheduling out for her to have a G tube. She also had a bag to catch her stool because she could not do that on her own. However, Baby Girl's life turned around. She came and Mom brought her in to work with me when she was just a couple of months old. And as you can see, she is now thriving. Baby Girl had the opportunity to go through this process that we're going to talk about today called the developmental sequence. And true story, after a couple of months of having the opportunity to go through the developmental sequence, they canceled her G-tube surgery. And instead, what they did was they reconstructed her small and large intestines because they were amazed at her progress. What were they amazed about? Well, Baby Girl can now eat, drink, suck, swallow all on her own. And she can even poop on her own. She is doing amazing. So much so that she was in early intervention here in Indiana. It's called First Steps. And they discharged her because she didn't need it anymore. She far exceeded their expectations. She was not only doing well for herself, but she was exceeding even the milestones of typical children in her age group. And so I just love that story and how well that she's doing. So what is the developmental sequence and where did this come from? Okay, well, every unimpeded, unimpaired infant organically engages in a logical, systematic progression. And what that progression does is it develops the lower foundations of the brain. It helps develop our central nervous system. This is not a man-made program. This is what every human infant was designed to do. How do we know this? Because back in about 1940s, a group of researchers went and observed babies, infants, in every continent except Antarctica and found that when they were unimpeded and unimpaired, they would go through this progression. What exactly is that progression? We're going to talk about that now. Okay, this progression that they go through, that every baby goes through, includes tummy crawling, tummy time, tummy crawling, and hands and knees creeping. And that's just a piece of it. This process directly impacts the development of the infant's soul, their mind, their heart, which we call the seat of their emotions, and their strength. What do I mean by their strength? I'm referring to their physical body, which also includes sensation, how they feel externally and internally. Now, given the opportunity to engage in the developmental sequence, which includes movement, reflexive patterns, and sensory integration, the infant is given equal access and opportunity to equip the brain for life. Now, gaps or injury interrupts this process and negatively impacts that infant's future global development. Now, the developmental sequence for infants, I like to say it's as simple as A, B, and C. Okay, let's break it down. Let's begin with A. A, from birth, infants need to be on their tummies approximately 50% of a 24-hour period. We call this tummy all the time. B, tummy all the time will lead to tummy crawling, which includes the belly button being flat on the ground and the baby moving forward. This form of movement is similar to an army crawl. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. Now, right about now, you might be thinking, I really don't have an infant and I have an older child and I have concerns for them. I'm not sure that this relates. Hang in there with me just for a little bit. You're going to see how this will all connect, okay? So back to the developmental sequence. Here's a tip. If a baby doesn't need mittens, they do not need socks. When a baby is engaging in tummy crawling, all a baby needs is a comfortable onesie and a safe floor to crawl around on. Now, C, at approximately 6 to 12 months, babies need an ample amount of time to creep on their hands and knees. Now, I want you to notice the position of the baby. Baby is up on all fours, and the belly button is no longer touching the ground. Babies should continue creeping until their creep has developed into an efficient cross-lateral movement. So we ask, why is the developmental sequence so important? What is the fuss all about? Why not simply carry my baby around all the time? Or keep them in a container such as a car seat. After all, this is so much more convenient. And in fact, it's lucrative, especially for the toy industry. Well, when an infant engages in the developmental sequence, again, they're being given equal access and opportunity to equip that brain for life. Here are some examples. 1, a baby who is a happy soul, one who is bonded with their primary caretaker. 2, a child who is socially, emotionally equipped to have healthy peer interactions. 3, a student who is able to learn well. And finally, an adult who has the strength needed to make a positive global impact. Now, amongst many things, the developmental sequence has a profound effect on key systems and functions in the human infant. The systems include the auditory system, the visual system and the tactile system. So how we process sounds, how we process and use our vision functionally. And here we're not talking about acuity. We're not talking about 20/20 vision. We're talking about how the system uses the eyes in a functional everyday life. Okay. And also our tactile system. Okay. Our tactile system, as I mentioned earlier, includes not only how we feel externally, but how we feel internally. The functions that the developmental sequence impacts are our motor function, how we move, our communication. Okay, do we have the ability to communicate, to speak, or maybe not? Our hand function. We are the only created beings that use our hands the way we do. And we're going to talk about this more. Now, I want to touch briefly on each of these areas. Now, please note, each of these areas can be unpacked in great depth if time allowed. But in this short period, I just want to give you some brief examples in each of the areas. Okay, let's begin with visual. Okay, now, when a little baby is born, they are born with reflexes, such as the light reflex. Shine a light in a baby's eyes, and what happens? Those little eyes will contract. Take that light away, and the eyes are going to expand. Now, this little baby's eyes, okay, are drawn to their primary caretaker's eyes. And what they do is they begin to gaze into the pupils. Now, when mom's eyes, we will use mom for today as the primary caretaker, as our sample example of the primary caretaker, okay? It's just more simplistic, okay? So mom's eyes, if mom's eyes are relaxed and happy, okay, and engaging with the baby, well, that sets the stage for an oxytocin brain. An oxytocin-based brain will then enable that baby later on to bond, to learn, to explore. But if mom's eyes are tense, angry, aloof, or unavailable, I've got baby over here, baby's nursing, kind of leaning that bottle up, and then I'm over here on my phone, then what happens is that sets the stage for a cortisol-based brain. And this has a negative impact on how that baby will learn in the future. It also has a negative impact academically, physically, and even spiritually. Let's go on to auditory. Now, again, when babies are first born, they have these reflexes. When they go through the developmental sequence, those reflexes are supposed to integrate and they need to move out of the way, get out of the way, okay? But when they are first born, one reflex they have is the startle reflex. You make a noise and baby's gonna jump, right? Now, if that startle reflex is integrated and moves out of the way as the baby develops later on in life, they will have the ability to attend and to focus. They'll be able to drown out noise, okay, or filter out sounds. For example, a vacuum cleaner can be going on around them and they could be home doing e-learning or homeschooling and it's not going to bother them. They can focus. However, if that startle reflex is not integrated, it's as if that baby grows up to have a surplus of attention, okay? And everything distracts them or upsets them, okay? I have a client who, oh, mommy, all those noises, the dog was barking and the vacuum cleaner was going, all these noises are overwhelming to me, okay? Oftentimes, that's an indication that that child may have a retained moral reflex, okay? On the flip side, they may also tune everything out. Now, if that moral reflex is integrated, another beautiful outcome is that that child later on in life will have the ability to read social cues. Why is that important? Because if I can read social cues, nonverbal social cues, especially the subtle ones, this will enable me to have healthy social interactions, right? So if, somebody, I'm too close to somebody and that person kind of backs off and I can read that, then I'm going to back off, right? Or maybe I can't read social cues and I'm like all up in somebody's face, and that might make me make that person want to reject me, and that can have an adverse effect on me socially and emotionally. And I mean, I'm talking in extreme senses here, right? Let's go into the tactile system. I love to talk about the tactile system because it's during this stage of the infant developmental sequence that the seeds of compassion are um, being watered, so to speak. And I loved learning about that. In fact, I learned about all of this from one of the most compassionate women that I know, and her name is Betty Lamont, and she was my teacher and mentor, and I have to give her and Nina Jonio a lot of credit for all of this work and how they're passing this on to us. But Betty, she has just this beautiful sense of compassion, and during this stage, so let's get back on track here. So during this stage of development, babies, their seeds of compassion are being watered. Hmm. Let, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is that when we're interacting with that little baby, okay, and they're hot or they're cold and they cry and we respond to them, okay, they are developing a normalized sense of sensation. Or if they're in pain and they're hungry and we respond to them, that helps them to develop a normalized pain tolerance. Why is that so important? Well, because if I understand how I feel and I can perceive hot and cold, or I can perceive pain appropriately, then that enables me to be more empathetic to the world around me and those that I come in contact with. So, for example, if um, I cannot feel pain, right? It's not such a big deal if I go over and bonk you on the head because it didn't hurt me. Why would it hurt you? And oftentimes, we can have compassion for the playground bully because those playground bullies, oftentimes, they have a very high pain tolerance. Let's talk a little bit about motor function, okay? As we stated earlier, our babies need to have tummy all the time, not just sometimes, tummy all the time. 50% of a 24-hour period, our babies should be on their tummy. And I love how Alexandra puts it. She says that should be their default position. And I agree with her. The baby's default position should be on their tummy. Now, why so? Because tummy all the time will then cause that baby to lift up their head. They'll begin to reach with their hands. Their toes will begin to dig. Okay? This will lead to tummy crawling, which stabilizes their lumbar curve of the spine, helps to form arches in the foot, helps to form a solid hip socket. And here's one that a lot of our parents really like. It stimulates the genital area, preparing the baby for being toilet trained at an appropriate age in the absence of any other disorder. I want to pause here to introduce Jairus to you. Okay, Jairus, I began working with him about 7 months ago, and here's what his mom, and she'll be speaking tonight. Her name is Sarah Churchill, and she will be one of our parent panelists. And here's what she wrote into to me just recently. Already, I am completely amazed at what Jairus has accomplished. Our list of accomplishments is so long, but some of the highlights include mental math, sight words, no potty accidents after 5 years of potty training, puzzling independently, speaking in full sentences, asking questions, no more limping, no more hip popping out of the socket, not falling over or tripping anymore, the ability to climb ladders, the ability to zip his coat independently, feelings of remorse and bonding with his baby brother. And that was my favorite, that he now has the ability, those seeds of compassion have been watered by giving Jairus the opportunity to go through the developmental sequence, and he is now able to bond with his baby brother. Let's talk a little bit about communication. Okay. Well, another reflex that babies are born with is the vital cry. When we respond to the vital cry, the cycle of trust is established. Okay. This gives that baby a sense of empowerment. When I cry, someone responds to me. And eventually, along the way, this helps to develop their communication skills. And I'm just going to wrap it up here really quickly. Let's talk about hand function, okay? In terms of hand function, when our babies are tummy crawling, they begin this process called an active reach and a passive turn. Active reach and a passive turn, okay? And that develops supination, pronation. Supination, pronation develops cortical opposition. Well, cortical opposition leads to a tripod grip. And so everything that our babies go through, all of the development prepares them for later on in life. So a lot of times I will have a child that will come in and they are struggling with their tripod grip. And we'll get them to go through, to replicate their developmental sequence and give them the opportunity to go through that. And their fine motor skills improve tremendously. I'd like to introduce you to the Linetti family, and this is their Little Miss Sunshine. And this is what they wrote into me. Thanks, Jocelyn. We can't express enough how much we appreciate you. We were again talking last week about how you have shaped our parenting. Another compliment from a program director at the library. She called our Little Miss Sunshine a genius baby. A genius baby. No, not genius, just unhindered in development. And what was so one of the things that Little Miss Sunshine's preschool teachers noted was that she came in with a tripod grip, and they never had to teach her how to hold a crayon. She just sat down and started coloring. So in summary, the developmental sequence for infants is as simple as A, B, and C. However, the impact is profound, okay? There are so many programs out there. They come and go in waves. There's movement programs that focus on make sure you cross the midline. Then there's programs that focus on, for a long time, on sensory integration. And then another program will just focus on reflex integration. Well, working on individual areas in isolation will give you improvements in that specific area. However, we are global beings, and the developmental sequence provides a global approach to equipping the brain for life. So who do we work with? At Neurali, we work with infants, we work with children, we work with students and adults. We work with typically developing children. For example, I had a mom bring in her kid, typically developing, just doing a wonderful job, but he was riddled with anxiety and he did not like to read. And we got his eyes working correctly, and now this child, he loves to read on his own. He doesn't need to be prompted. We work with those on the spectrum, those with diagnosis, those that have gone through adoption, foster care, orphan care, trauma such as birth trauma, head injuries, multiples, preemies, and we also get to work with the best parents in the world. I love our parents. The parents that we work with, they understand this process is not a quick fix. They understand that I'm signing up and I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm in this and I'm going to believe in the process and I'm going to see an outcome. And they do. Now, I can't guarantee you that 100% that it always happens, but I would say so far in my practice, at least minimum 95 to 98% of my families that are committed to the process see significant changes in the development of their children. With that said, I want to give you an opportunity to hear from one of our families.
We've been consulting with Jocelyn Williams from Neurally Solutions for a year for my struggling 10 and 5-year-old. My 10-year-old was struggling with emotional cues, emotional awareness, controlling her emotions, and now she's able to see when I'm upset. She's able to articulate her own emotions. She's able to play a game, lose, and gracefully support the winner. It's been huge in her making friends and relationally interacting in our family. My 5-year-old was struggling with letters and numbers. He'd been exposed over 2 years, but none of it seemed to stick. I tried teaching him the letter A for over a month, using songs, drawings, actions, and it just wasn't sticking. Now, a year later, we just started reading lessons 3 weeks ago. He knows all his vowels, several consonants. His visual memory is now working. Neurodevelopmental movement are simple exercises tailored to your child that help optimize the brain. If your child is struggling, whether it's emotional or academic, I encourage you to look into Neurally Solutions and consult with Jocelyn Williams, because these things can be overcome.
At Neurally, our process is very simple. The steps include the following. 1, setting up a video assessment or in-person assessment with our developmental movement consultant, the baby or the client, and the primary caretaker. For babies, we will assess any gaps or milestones that baby needs to reach the developmental sequence and to go through the developmental sequence. For our older children, we'll get into that in just a minute, we replicate it, okay? 2, training. The developmental movement consultant will review the results of the assessment with the primary caretaker and provide training in the elements of the developmental sequence that is needed. 3, the primary caretaker will be given a daily movement plan and support protocols to ensure that their baby or their older child or student or loved one has equal access and opportunity to complete that developmental sequence. Okay. Now, for our older children, our students, and our adults, we replicate the developmental sequence. And this pathway is called neurodevelopmental movement. And it's based on neuroplasticity. When given the right triggers, the brain is able to change. I am not a medical professional. I'm an educator. I educate about the developmental sequence. And why? Because there's hope and there is a second chance. During the assessment, we will look intently for any gaps in the developmental sequence. We're going to train the primary caregiver in the necessary protocols to fill in those gaps, and we're going to provide you with a daily movement plan of movement, reflex integration, and sensory work. Is this process easy? I spoke to a mom today. She said, okay, just be honest with me. Is this easy or is this a battle? I'd be lying to you. I'd be misleading you if I told you this was easy. It is not easy, but anything that is worth it, you're going to have to put some sweat into it, right? And so it is not easy, but it is so well worth it. And so I want to just share Lucia's story with you. And this is what her mom wrote into me just this week. The day following our reassessment with you, we followed breakfast with the sequence of patterns and movements that you suggested. It was a long, hard hour. There were some tears, there was some resistance, but we did not let her give up. We didn't let her give up the fight. She got it done, and she was so chill. She was in control all day long. We repeated the next morning, same results in our day: control, regulated emotions, etc. The next day was church and Mother's Day, and we didn't get any in. Um, I take responsibility for that. She did well though. This morning, we had a slower and tougher start to the morning. She wasn't doing well. She was losing control. Once I was able to get her fed, we powered through our hour plus of everything. She fought me. She wanted to quit. I wanted to quit. I fought the urge to give up, and we got it done. I also was able to get more sensory sets in today. Her day turned around for her. Her chaotic morning calmed after the patterns and movements and turned into a really great afternoon. I now see that morning is truly, really, truly key to help her the most. Thank you for your gentle and encouraging guidance and the wisdom you bring. Now, in just a minute, we are going to stop this presentation and we're going to switch over to our parent panel. So if you haven't done so, now's the time to start typing your questions in the chat box. I want to encourage you to connect with us for more information about neurodevelopmental movement or about the developmental sequence. To schedule an assessment, just get in contact with me, Jocelyn Williams. My phone number is 317-936-6797. My email is jwilliams@nsibrain.com, or you can connect with me on social media at NeuroDevelopmental. And by the way, if you're not sure if this would be a good fit for your family member, we do have a checklist available to help you determine if an assessment is needed. Early next week, we'll send out a follow-up email, and in that follow-up email, we will provide the assessment checklist. Now, without any further ado, I am happy to announce that we are going to begin our parent panel. Our guest speakers today are Emma Eppert. So Emma, can you turn on your... There's Emma. Can you... There's Emma. We have Kate. Hi, Kate. So, and we have Amanda. Welcome, Amanda. And we have Sarah. And we have Darcy. Where's Darcy? There she is. Hi, Darcy. So each of our parents are going to take a couple minutes here to tell us a little bit about their story, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So why don't we begin with Emma?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being on tonight. I have been doing neurodevelopmental movement with Jocelyn for over a year just a year with my 5 and 10-year-old. You saw in my little video, my 10-year-old had she's brilliantly smart, but a lot of social and emotional struggles. So I wanted her to not just be a smart, quirky kid, because relationships are a big part of life. So doing the developmental sequence with her so far has just made her be able to connect with us, and it's been beautiful. And then my 5-year-old has been exposed to letters, numbers, all the things for over 2 years. And his visual memory was terrible. He couldn't remember which was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which letters were what. And now, this is week 5 now of our reading lessons, and he knows over half of the alphabet and the sounds with no problem. And I'm like doing 10, 15 minutes a day with him. It's marvelous. It's kind of the work smarter, not harder. If your brain is firing correctly, you're gonna get somewhere. So I also have a severely autistic son who is 12, and we did program for 18 months and have taken a little bit of a break, but has helped his motor planning, his speech, his focus, his attention in marvelous ways. So that's us.
Thank you, Emma. Kate?
Hello, I have been working with Jocelyn and my daughter Annie. We've been working with her since March, middle of March, and we have been working through the developmental sequence as she's prescribed it for us. My daughter has struggled with some sensory issues and reading comprehension. She has done a lot of overcompensating to be able to survive, and we just knew that there was something that had to be done to help her. While she might be a straight A student and she plays violin beautifully, she just had a lot of trouble, has a lot of trouble with social cues. She has issues with reading people's faces and understanding what they are feeling, and she did a lot of mimicry of me to get by. Recently, she was in a very, very difficult rhetoric class that she struggled mightily with, was afraid that she was not going to pass her first section. And just a couple weeks ago, she gave the most beautiful speech. And her professor said that it was her finest hour. So it's been really an amazing, I'm sorry, an amazing difference just in a matter of weeks, truly. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Sarah?
Okay. Hello, my name is Sarah Churchill, and I have a 9-year-old typical kid. I have syndrome and a 15-month-old baby who keeps me on my toes. So I've been doing NR with my daughter and my son, but I'm going to specifically talk to you about my son Jairus, who is 7. And you saw his picture earlier with the puzzle. And so Jairus was born full term, but he had a seizure shortly after birth and was transferred to a NICU unit where he spent the first 30 days of his life. While he was there, that was when we learned that he had Down syndrome. He also had 3 holes in his heart, very low muscle tone. He couldn't take a bottle or nurse, so we came home with a feeding tube, and he had his G-tube for 22 months. So really the first 2 years of Jairus's life, when he should have been doing all of these developmental movement things, he was too sick to do because we spent that time keeping him alive instead. And so now we're backtracking and we're fixing all of that. So because of his Down syndrome, he's been nonverbal, not potty trained, I mean, all kinds of things. I could write a book, truly. He would trip all over the place, bad balance. He couldn't remember things for school. So about a year ago, I listened to one of Jocelyn's lectures, and that's when I first heard about this. But like Jocelyn said, this is not an easy thing to do. And so one of Jairus's orthopedic doctors was saying that he wanted to do surgery to reconstruct Jairus's hip. And that became my reason why we needed to do this thing. I didn't want to have him have to relearn how to walk again, or all of the things that we struggled to learn. I couldn't do it again. And so that was my reason. And that's why we started 7 months ago. And in the first month of doing NR, we had more gains than we'd had in 7 years of therapy, traditional therapy. So, yeah, his lazy eye is better. He reads. He doesn't fall over anymore. When we go to the park, he's everywhere. He can climb anything. We just had amazing, amazing gains. So even though he has Down syndrome, which makes you think that there would be less for him, I'm finding that there is always, always more.
Thank you so much,,, 'Sarah. 'Amanda?
'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? 'Amanda? Hello, my son is 11. We started working with Jocelyn in July of last year. He had to take 3 months off for a broken collarbone. He loves to flip and do all that kind of stuff. Super athletic, but emotionally, to summarize it, we always say that he never really got past the 3-year-old stage where they ask a million questions. They want to know what's next. The whole everybody has to play by the same rules. He got a red cup. Why don't I have a red cup? Just all those little things that you would hope a child would grow out of by the time they're 8, 9, 10 years old. We tried occupational therapy. We got a little success for that. We tried counseling. He was diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, depression. He was a struggle to live with for the whole family. I hate to say that about my own kid, but he had rages. He would throw things at people when he got angry. You couldn't communicate with him when he was like that. So we just kind of had to let him go off in the corner by himself. And now he's, I can't remember when he had his last rage. It's been forever. We've had ups and downs. The program has been a struggle. Poor Jocelyn, our first meeting, he was not kind at all. And I left in tears. But now, he's like a totally different kid. And while we still have a ways to go, if I had to take the kid he is today, I would still say he's a million times more successful just in life than he was just several months ago. So thank you, Jocelyn.
All right, it looks like we have some questions here in the chat bar. If you have more questions, please feel free to add them, and we're going to go walking through them. So our first question here is from Bethel. She says, I have a question and don't know if it fits. I'm working with a 6-year-old with emotional and developmental delays. He recently was given a summer haircut. His skull has ridges and hollow areas. I remember attending a training 25 plus years ago regarding this. His head looks like his 4 skull plates. I don't remember the correct name, but they overlap. The overlap would be the front left and right plates and the front and back plates on the bottom, on both left and right. There's a gap between the back plate. I think the question is, would program help this 6-year-old child with emotional developmental delays as well as a difference in skull structure?
Great question, and thank you for clarifying that, Emma. So if his issues stem from the central nervous system, yes, we can help him. But we would just need to make sure that he has medical clearance, and that because there's a lot of movement activity involved with the process, and we just want to make sure, as I stated earlier, I am not a medical provider, so as long as he has medical clearance, he can work through this process and it can help him. Great question, thank you.
Can this program be done online? I am asking since I'm from Singapore and I don't see any local therapists.
Yes, this program can be done online. We always like to say in person is better, but when we have no other choice, we are happy to offer it online. And so we are trained in providing this service online for you. So, yep, that is a possibility.
Maria was asking, how long does it typically take to go through the process?
All right. So how about we let some of the parents answer that question? How long is it taking for you moms to get through um, your movement plan? Go ahead, Kate.
We usually take about an hour to get through everything at this point. It's pretty close to an hour at this point that we spend. We do it first thing in the morning.
What about you, Sarah?
It takes my family about 2 to 2.5 hours, but I'm also doing it with 2 kids. So, and I have a 15-month-old. So that is another wild card. So it takes me a little longer.
Darcy, if your mic is working and you want to chime in, just wave at us and let us know whenever you're ready. All right, go ahead, Darcy.
Sorry, I kept pushing the button of the mute button. And I don't have the best service out here, so I think sometimes it breaks up and I miss things. So I have a 2-year-old, she'll be 3 next month, and I have a 5-month-old. So my daughter and my son, we see Jocelyn for my daughter, who struggled with severe anxiety. So that's like the quick background with us being involved. So I do exercises with both of them. And for my daughter, Noelle, I would say at least an hour. But with her being a toddler, not being in school, I'm a stay-at-home mom, it's spread out throughout the day. So it's not like we just sit down and do an hour. In the morning, she'll do some crawling with dad and so on and so forth. We'll do some of our exercises, and then, after lunch and before bed. So maybe 15-minute spurts. Is that helpful?
Yes. Amanda?
Again, my son has ADHD, so we take lots of breaks. But it usually takes us 2.5 to 3 hours because there's lots of trampoline time in between those. So
Right. And it's not 2.5 hours of straight doing a straight movement plan. It's because you're giving him lots of breaks in between. All right. Back to Emma.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the 2.5 to 2.5, sometimes 3, depending on the day. But I have 3 people, so it's a lot of people, and then they mess with each other. So that's a thing. But worth it.
Yeah.
Bethel had a question here. Over half of my children in childcare deal with trauma, developmental delays, control issues, and the list goes on. How can I be trained to use this program to help kiddos in my care? My daughter has PFASD and PTSD diagnosis. She too would benefit.
That's a great question. That would take some training on your part. The best, if you want to be trained to be a certified developmental movement consultant, then I would refer you to Betty Lamont and Nino Jonio for that. We also do we can do a movement plan with an agency or in a school setting, and we can work that out. For example, we are currently working with Bond County Parent Project in Greenville, Illinois. And so just get in contact with me directly and we can work through that. Okay, and how we would do that.
Victoria says, we have 6-year-old adopted twins that toe walk and are very impulsive. Would this program help?
Yes, and Victoria, I have twin girls and they are now 17. We started this process when they were 12. And I tell you, it helped them so much, but I always thought to myself, I wish I would have started earlier with them. And so 6 is such a nice time, and Kate is shaking her head too, right? I wish I would have known this when my children were little, which is one of the reasons why I really emphasize not only neurodevelopmental movement for older kids, but the developmental sequence for infants. Because if you knew it back then we wouldn't, hopefully we wouldn't be here, right? And so yes, I say, Victoria, it would help your children tremendously, and I would encourage you to look into it.
If anyone has more questions, feel free to put them in the chat bar. As of now, I think people are thinking. It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a. So tell you, while you're thinking through and typing up a couple more questions, I'll just end with telling you a little bit about my story and how I became a developmental movement consultant. As you saw earlier in this presentation, I have 5 kiddos, and 3 of my kids were adopted, and one of my kids in particular was struggling significantly and had multiple diagnoses. He had a very, very rough start to life, and in birth in utero, and was exposed to things that, you know, a baby in utero shouldn't be. And so when he came to us, he had some medical concerns, and he had failure to thrive. And so what did I do? I did attachment parenting, and I carried him for the first year of his life. And did everything that I knew to do to help him, but things were getting worse. Now, he was well attached. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He's a love. You meet him, my goodness, he's the most charming, loving little boy, but he was struggling. Things were getting worse. And by the time he was 8 years old, I decided I'm at my wit's end with him. Nothing is working. Let's go the route of medication. And I did. And then some of the things that he began to say frightened me. I became fearful for his life and his safety, and immediately weaned him off and said, we are not doing that route. I came across this process by attending Betty Lamont's workshop, and I said, I have to try this. I have to try this for my son. And I tell you, just one little example, he would wrap his arms around my neck. He's 8 years old. And at the time he was 8 years old, he'd wrap his arms around my neck, screaming for dear life because he did not want to be in a pool. And all the other children, actually, he wanted to be in the pool. He wanted to have fun, but he was so afraid. And all the other children, 8-year-old, 9-year-old boys are jumping in the water, splashing, and he's clinging on to me for dear life. And it just broke my heart. I thought, no, this isn't okay. He should have life abundantly and be free to be a child. And just, I want him to have fun. And so we started this process. And I tell you, that same week, and this doesn't always happen. For some families, you know, I had one family, they didn't see a change for about a year. But when they sat in my office and cried, both parents cried, wept at the significant change that they saw. But in my case, it was within 4 days. That same little boy that was clinging to my neck, he just said, "Watch this, Mom," and jumped into the pool all by himself. And I was floored. I was so shocked. Took out my video camera, videoed it, and sent it to my husband, and he couldn't believe it. And that was it. I was sold, and that was about 5 years ago. I was then invited to be trained, be a developmental movement consultant, and here I am, and offering the same hope and giving other kiddos a second chance. So, any more questions, Emma?
Yes, Catherine says, I have a daughter who is 9 that was adopted at 6 with processing issues and spina bifida. She struggles with language and comprehension. Thoughts about how it could help?
Yes, so oftentimes when a child is struggling with processing, it could be said that their corpus callosum is working inefficiently. So the corpus callosum is the little bridge that connects the right and left side of the brain. It helps the right and left side of the brain communicate and work efficiently. And so what we do is we offer very specific movement, sensory work, and reflex work that helps to trigger neuroplasticity, helps shore up that corpus callosum, and oftentimes, most times, our kids' processing improves. Again, I'm not going to guarantee you that, in 4 days, things are going to be perfect. Will it help? Absolutely, yes, it will.
There's no more questions as of now, so.
Okay, perfect timing. It's exactly 9 o'clock. Thank you so much. Moms, do you have anything else you'd like to share before we head out for the evening?
Catherine just said thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Kate.
I just would like to say that if you are on the fence about this and you have a child that you think might be able to benefit from this, I would recommend you go ahead and go for it, because you will wonder why you waited after you've started, because I've seen such great response right away. I think you will too.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kate, for sharing that. And Kate is a principal at a school, and we got connected because she saw changes in one of her students. And her student was one of the little girls that shared her testimony, Lucia. And so I'm so glad that we were able to connect. Anyone else have any last minute? Go ahead, Sarah.
I just wanted to say about the speech. My son was nonverbal for the first 5 years of his life. We did so much speech therapy. I mean, it's insane. But within a couple of months of doing NR, he was yelling sentences to me when he was angry about doing his exercises. But that would be appropriate for a 7-year-old boy to yell at their mother when they don't want to do something. So I would encourage you that it seems strange to crawl, to talk, but for some reason, it works.
It does. Anyone else?
Can I chime in?
Absolutely, Darcy.
I would just say trust your gut. And, the free webinars or a phone consultation, it can't hurt anything. It's worth exploring. My family was very skeptical and not supportive, and those same family members are now like, what did you do to this child? Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And so I would just encourage you, it's worth it to at least explore it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So appreciate you taking the time to be here with us to learn about neurodevelopmental movement. I want to just give an extra shout out to our parents who joined us tonight. And they are volunteering their time. And when I asked them, hey, would you join us? Absolutely, yes, I will. Because, again, I work with some of the best parents, I think, in all of the world. And so thank you for joining and sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. Emma Eppert, thank you for hosting. And I want to point out that Emma Eppert is an RPM practitioner. And she helps nonverbal children using a letterboard. And it's just so fascinating, the work that she does. So Emma's somebody you want to connect with. If you're in Greenville and you need a great school, I would get in contact with Kate. And then we have Alexandra Lilly, who's in Canada. So thank you for being with us, Alexandra. Thank you, everyone. This ends our series of webinars that we've been having over the last several weeks. I will be sending you a link that will give you about 3 or 4 of our webinars that we've done. But please stay connected with us, because just in a couple of weeks, we're going to start up a new series of webinars, and we will keep you posted about that, whether it be through our email list or on Facebook or Instagram. So thank you again for joining me and all of us tonight. My name is Jocelyn Williams of NeuroDevelopmental Solutions, and tonight's webinar was called NeuroDevelopmental Movement Questions and Answers. It's been an honor and a privilege. Have a great night. Bye-bye, everyone.